Hey guys, Tightrope here, teaching you all you need to know to get the most out of your Indirect Fire in Company of Heroes 3. In Company of Heroes 3, most Indirect Fire weapon teams, such as mortars, have a range bonus when firing with the Barrage ability compared to Autofire or Attack Ground. And both the LEIG and Pack Howitzer have really long range bonuses on their barrages. The barrage also allows them to fire far more rapidly. The US Forces mortar barrage fires 6 shells in 17.5 seconds. Whereas if you fire 6 shells with attack ground, it takes 51.5 seconds. That's nearly 3 times as long, so these indirect fire weapons are really all about their barrage. Now say you want to kill an enemy emplacement by constantly barraging it with your mortar. If you try to do this at maximum range, the mortar will not be firing at the emplacement during the barrage's cooldown, which for the US mortar is currently 30 seconds. And if you get preoccupied doing something else and forget to reactivate the barrage, now the downtime is even longer than that. And if an enemy comes into auto-fire range of the mortar during this downtime, it will turn to face that enemy instead, adding a repositioning delay when you start the barrage on the emplacement again. This downtime from your indirect fire gives the enemy an opportunity to recruit, repair and heal their emplacements, hurting your chances of actually managing to kill it. So if you feel that it is safe, move your indirect fire weapon into attack ground range. Then, after you barrage, queue up an attack ground command by using Shift+E. This way, once the barrage is finished, your indirect fire weapon will continue attacking the emplacement. There is also a hidden benefit to doing this. Because the barrage timer doesn't end exactly when the 6th shell is launched, most of the bonuses carry over into your first attack ground shot. Essentially, this gives the barrage 7 shells instead of 6. There is about a 4.2 second delay between the 6th and 7th shell, which is a little bit slower than the barrage, which is around 3 seconds, but far better than autofire, which is 8.6. When using an indirect fire weapon such as a howitzer, try to set the facing direction ahead of time. In this case, with the BL 5.5, right-click the midpoint of the area you want to target. That way, when you come to do a barrage with it, there will be a minimal delay between the activation of the barrage and the shell's landing. If the weapon has to pack up, change angles, and then set back up again, with that extra delay, the enemy might have vacated the area you are trying to barrage. In this case, with the BL 5.5 rotating from the left VP to one on the right, it added around 7.5 seconds. In Code 2, if you wanted to change the direction your mortar was facing, so it would be prepared to fire at an enemy, you would right-click drag in that direction, causing the mortar team to pack up and then reset up facing that direction. And in Code 3, doing this takes a bit over 8 seconds. However, you don't need to do this in Company of Heroes 3 because standard mortars can rotate themselves incredibly quickly, though if they are reloading at the time, they need to complete that reload before they start to spin around. However, the larger indirect fire weapons such as the British Heavy Mortar, LEIG and Pack Howitzer do not share this functionality. They have to turn around by packing up and then resetting up, which is much slower. If a regular mortar is idle and an enemy unit comes into range and vision of it, it will automatically rotate to face that enemy and start firing at it. Whereas the larger indirect fire weapons do not automatically rotate in this fashion. They will stay facing the direction you last set them up at or were last barraging at. Now I'm not sure if this is a bug or a feature, because having these units stay set up the direction you want them at is quite useful, since their rotation time is far slower than regular mortars. And if you want these weapons to auto-fire at enemies, you do have some options. When they are in the packed up state and an enemy comes into auto-fire range, they will set up and start firing at it. You can also use the attack move command, though you have to be careful because this can change what your pack howitzer decides to shoot at through the target priority system. In this example, after using attack move, the pack howitzer switches from shooting at the pioneers that are on low health to the pioneers that are slightly closer. since that makes them a higher priority target. So you may want to queue up an attack move command a short distance in front of the pack howitzer after doing its barrage, so it automatically targets enemies that come into range. And if there are no enemies in range, it will pack up and move to the position of the attack move command. But don't worry, because while these weapons are packed up, their barrages continue to cool down, so leaving them in this packed up state will not slow down your barrages, though they will have to set up of course before they start barraging again. In Co 2, the cooldown of the mortar's barrage ability started immediately upon the ability's activation, so if you cancelled it after one shell, the cooldown would be around 27 seconds, but if you let the entire barrage fire, the cooldown will be around 3 seconds. Whereas in Company of Heroes 3, all of these indirect fire barrages function the same way that howitzers did in Company of Heroes 2. The barrage cooldown starts whenever the barrage finishes, or whenever you cancel the barrage. So in Company of Heroes 3, if you miss-target your barrage, you may want to cancel it immediately to start the cooldown process as fast as possible. Or if the enemy moves out of the area after the first couple shells, again you may want to cancel the barrage early to start that cooldown as fast as possible. It appears these indirect fire weapons will still reload while they are packing up and setting up. So I tried to do this as fast as possible to see if you could fire faster than the regular auto attack. But on the pack howitzer and the US Forces mortar, packing up and setting up between shots was around 1.5 seconds slower than auto attack. When you activate a barrage on an indirect fire weapon, the UI shows you a circle indicating where the barrage will target. However, this circle is slightly misleading. As you move around from minimum range to maximum range, the circle does not change in size at all. If you do a minimum range barrage, the shells do not scatter much at all, landing inside of the small circle. But if you do a maximum range barrage, now the shells can land outside of the large circle. On top of that, the shells tend to scatter in a more trapezoid style pattern instead of the circle. So you might want to adjust your targeting slightly compared to what the circle indicates. Or, if you feel it is safe to do so, you might want to move your indirect fire weapon closer to the enemy, so the shells scatter less and you land more of them on the intended target. This used to be very popular to do with vehicle-mounted rocket artillery in Company of Heroes 2. Since they are relatively fast, they can drive into close range relatively quickly. They fire all of their rockets in a short span of time compared to a howitzer, so they don't have to spend long close to the front line, where the opponent could move their units to and kill them, since they often don't have much health, and then can quickly drive back to safety. And you can queue up that set of commands by holding shift, which makes it quite easy to execute. This allows you to focus your attention elsewhere. Getting closer also reduces the amount of time between the noise of the rockets firing and them landing on the enemy, making it harder for your opponent to dodge them. For the walking Stuka firing close to max range, it is close to 6 seconds between hearing the rocket launch and the first one landing. But when firing at a target that is 60 range away, now it's about 3.75 seconds. This makes a big difference, especially when targeting team weapons that have a teardown time before they can start moving away. The extra 2 seconds of delay helps the anti-tank gun get away unscathed. When you shoot an indirect fire weapon into the fog of war, it experiences a penalty to its scatter, which is typically 25% more. In the north is a barrage with the fog of war on, experiencing the fog of war penalty, and in the south is a barrage with the fog of war turned off. So you may want to gain vision of the area you are targeting before you start your barrage, so your shells have the best chance of landing on the intended target. Though if you use a recon plane or fire a flare into that area, your opponent might notice it, expect you to barrage that area, and start dodging ahead of time. So play some mind games with the opponent by doing blind barrages, reconning areas you don't care about, or perhaps targeting behind their weapon's current position so they retreat into it to get the best results if they have shown they are good at dodging. If an indirect fire unit auto-attacks an enemy, it gets revealed in the fog of war as soon as the shell is launched. Whereas if you use barrage or attack ground, the indirect fire weapon does not get revealed until the shell lands and does damage. So try to avoid autofire or right-click targeting the enemy's unit with your indirect fire, because that early reveal in the fog of war makes it far easier for the opponent to dodge. Try using attack ground instead if the barrage is on cooldown. In Co 3, all of these indirect fire team weapons require 2 men to be crewing them for them to be functional. When they drop down to 1 man on the crew, he will abandon the weapon and run off the battlefield. Whereas in Co 2, some of these team weapons required 3 men and others only 1. The exception to this are emplacements such as the British BL 5.5. These cannot be sniped and will become decrewed once their large health pool is reduced to 0. At the moment, all of these indirect fire weapons have the same performance against units in cover, from the smallest mortar to the largest howitzer. A 25% damage reduction against units inside garrisons, and a 50% damage reduction against units behind heavy cover. Sometimes players complain about enemy mortar shells homing in on their units as they move around. However, these weapons actually have 0 accuracy, meaning they cannot roll a hit through the accuracy system. So once the shell is launched, it's going to land in a fixed position, and it will not track a unit as it moves around, even though it may feel like it sometimes. I will go into more depth about the accuracy and scatter system in a future video. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, I hope you consider coming on board as a Patreon backer.